Hey everybody, welcome to the Steelers show. Paul is here. Hey Paul. Joe is
Hello.
in need of sleep. He was some storms in his area, right? Is that over here?
I don't. Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Joe has a little nights, we'll put it like that, and he's catching up on his sleep, which is cool. Yeah, and the
It's like
Steelers.
9 o'clock where he is. What's he doing in bed at 9 o'clock?
There's some nights I enjoy doing this. This is fun. There's some nights where I will go to bed by 6. So yeah, I get it. It's all good. Let's talk a couple Steelers things. Again, we're kind of in that lull before the draft. Draft is 3 weeks away, so it's not too far away, but we're kind of a little ways where we shouldn't be doing 4 hours on the Steelers tonight. Couple things I wanted to ask you about. Miles Boykin is gone. Steelers obviously have a big hole at receiver after they traded Deontay Johnson, and they did not choose to resign Allen Robinson. They picked up Van Jefferson. They still got Calvin Austin, and they picked up the kid from the Eagles. I can't place his name right now. Um, the little fast guy from the Eagles. We'll just phrase it like that. Um, so the Steelers, all speculation, and we'll talk a little bit later. There's some rumors about the Steelers still interested in receiver and trade. You'd think they're at least picking one receiver in the draft somewhere. Where we'll have to figure that out. So there's an argument to say that really, did they really need Miles Boykin? And at receiver, I'd say no, but I liked him as a special teams guy. He had 15 tackles on special teams last year, not jaw dropping. But do you think they've got enough other special teams guy to make the difference? I don't know.
I mean, someone will pick up those tackles. Obviously, I don't know
Right.
that. If you get someone who's, it's nice to have that special teams expert, but is it really worth? I mean, if you can find someone who could be more of an impact outside of special teams, that would be a little nicer than someone who's only specialty. I mean, obviously kicker, but if you can
Right.
get a receiver who can help contribute on offense, that's going to be a better investment.
Well, if you look at the special teams captain, I guess, I mean, that guy's more your Miles Killebrew. Now, he's more of a block punt guy. I don't think he's a real big tackle guy on special teams. You're right. I mean, I think anymore, if you're the third running back or sixth receiver, you've got to be special teams. I mean, you can't just be, hey, I'm a great receiver. You got to be a guy who can play there. So I think whoever, and they'll probably evaluate, draft guys if they pick somebody late in the draft or whatever to try to fill that hole. They used Boykin a little bit receiver last year. He caught a couple passes, but nothing. He wasn't a definite part of
Right.
it. I don't know. Paul, I'm still a little concerned on receiver. I saw a podcast today that claimed that the draft was 17 deep at receiver. And by that, they mean there's 17 guys who can come in and do something. Maybe not be that number two guy, but guys who can come in and make a difference. I don't know, Paul. I'm still thinking they need, one, maybe two guys? Maybe make a trade. I don't know. They need a little bit more than they've got right now.
Yeah, but I don't see it as like this urgent thing where we need to make stupid moves in the draft.
Right.
I don't even know if I want a receiver in the second round, maybe third. So picking up some guys free agency or whatever, or a little trade or whatever, but I'm not. Obviously, we'll get the depth somewhere. They're not going to go in with just the guys we have right now, so they'll come from somewhere. It's not a position I'm freaking out about. Again, you've got a Super Bowl quarterback, Russell Wilson. If you upgrade the line, I think the receivers will be. You don't need all these splash receivers. If Pickens can be that legitimate number one, then you just need some other guys who can be reliable. So it's not a position that I'm panicking about by any means.
Well, and this is why I don't think the Steelers are a Super Bowl team. There's so many questions like that. Like, how good can Russell Wilson really be? We don't know. I think he can be better than what they had last year, but I won't bet my house on that. There's no way. The other big question I have, and you're right, I don't think the Steelers need 4,000-yard receivers, but I think they need somebody. And man, a question I've got is George Pickens that number one guy? I mean, when he's good, he's great. But when he's bad, he's not blocking and he's sulking if he doesn't get a bunch of targets a game. And I know receivers are all kind of, oh, they're not all prima donna, but a lot more of them are that way. I think you've got to accept it to a certain point. But you and I were over there at the training camp, and we were in a little circle of reporters that were surrounding George Pickens, and I don't know, man. I didn't get a great vibe off of him. You know what I mean? I just,
Yeah,
and I know near the end of the year, I know I think Mason talked to him and he, was blocking a little bit more and he had a couple good receiving games, but I don't know, man. I just didn't get a great vibe from George Pickens. Like after we met with him, and again, there was
right.
other reporters there too, but I just didn't get this feel like, wow, this is our franchise, Jerry Rice type guy. I just got a weird vibe. I don't know.
I mean, I think, Joe's made the point before that with your number one receiver, you have to expect them to be a diva. I mean, you kind of need to be a diva to be a number one wide receiver. And it's just a question of, does that divaness become a detriment? Um, I
Right.
think there's times last year where it did become a detriment. So I think if you start off and you're competitive and looking good and winning, um, because as they were getting some momentum, he was picking up his game. So if again, it's winning solves a lot of problems. So if they're having more success, obviously if you're doing more than three and outs, he's getting more opportunities to get the ball, which is what every diva receiver wants. So I think if those things are happening, I think and I hope, maybe I'm just being too optimistic, but I think the diva traits can be more off the field things than on the field things. Hopefully,
Well, and really, I sent you a couple suggestions. In essence, they all kind of go together. So here's my thinking. At the present moment, and I got a feeling the Steelers may try to trade up a little bit or down a little bit in the draft. I
right?
think the way the draft boards are falling, it's definitely possible. So here's the thought. You got one first round pick, one second round pick, two third round picks. Now, again, they could trade down and get more assets. They could use the extra third round pick to try to trade up a little bit. And everything's on the table. But here's my question. I think they definitely need a center. I think they definitely need a tackle. You can make an argument about defensive line. I mean, they could end up going there somewhere high. I don't know if it's a drastic need, but I still think you need another corner. I still think you need another receiver. So you got four needs. Now I'm with you, Paul. I don't think we need to, get desperate and draft a guy. I mean, I still think they can kind of look at that number 20 pick and say, who's the best guy out there? Now I hope that best guy out there is one of the four positions I just mentioned. I guess I guess the easy question is okay, wait till 20 to see who the best guys out there. Do you have a priority though? Like if at number 20 there's a grade B tackle, grade B center, grade B corner, and grade B receiver. I know you like the offensive lineman. If you say offensive lineman, do you prefer a tackle, center? I mean, if they're all the same, what position do you think they need the most?
If I was in their draft room and had any input, which obviously I don't, um, I'm I want to target a the best possible center we can get. That's my first priority. So um, if there's a way to maybe trade a third and later pick or something to move up to 15, maybe to get that ideal center, I'm okay to do that. But I want a stud center, and then the next one I want a stud tackle. So that's my 1A and 1B.
Okay, here's where it gets interesting now, and I'm with you on this. Jackson Powers Johnson. This is kind of like the guy where a lot of times people are saying he's a center from Oregon. If he's there, let's just take him. Be done with it. There's a lot of crap going on draft wise right before the draft. Some people question his health. Is he really that healthy to go that high, or whatever else the case might be? I'm hearing some other people say it's kind of like the other year. I was really pushing for Steelers to draft a guy like Najee Harris or Travis Etienne in the first round. And I heard all these people say you don't draft a running back in the first round. These are devalued positions. You can get good ones later. And, we didn't listen. And Najee's all right. I'm not sure if he probably got overdrafted from where he's at right now, but he's been pretty good. I'm starting to hear that centers are kind of getting overdrafted, where you can get a good center later. But the issue I have is there's 2 or 3 guys that people like, but like Powers Johnson could be gone if they don't draft him at 20. There's a kid from West Virginia. I think it's like Frazier's his last name. They're saying he could be around at 51 in the second round pick, but maybe he won't be. You never know. So here's my thinking. And again, Paul, we're not going to know who's going to be around at what position. Is there a way they can get both? Look at the Houston Texans last year, and this is a little bit apples and oranges. They got C.J. Stroud, the guy they liked, but then they said, hey, we need a good edge rusher. They traded back up right afterwards and got Anderson, who did really well from last year. I'm not expecting the Steelers to trade up for like the 3rd and 4th picks this year, but is there any way they could, like at 20, pick whatever the best center or tackle is, and then maybe get another pick in the first round and get the other guy they need?
If they can find a way to pull it off, I'd be all for that. I mean, I guess the thing with running backs is, and I agree with that sentiment that I looking back, I wish I was all let's get Najee, let's get Najee. Now I'm like, yeah, I think that wisdom's right because ultimately, by and large, running backs have about 5 years, and then they start to taper off in their abilities. Offensive linemen, as long as they stay reasonably healthy, I mean, they can play for a long time. So, I mean, that's if you get somebody at 22 years old and you draft him and he's a great lineman, he could still be a great lineman at 35, 38, 40 years old. So I don't, I'm not sold on the overdrafting of offensive linemen. I get the best possible guy you can. If we can find a way to get 2 offensive linemen in the first round, please, by all means, explore those options.
Well, and the rule still exists where if you get that guy in the first round, that's why you see sometimes teams trade back at the end of the first round to get that quarterback or something. Whoever you get in the first round, you can get them for a 5-year contract. So you got an extra year of development, extra year for a good guy to be under a rookie deal. We talk about that. Like even with Kenny Pickett, I mean, he was under a rookie deal. That's a valuable contract if the guy is doing well or not. So I love that concept for a lineman. I'm looking at these tackles. I hear a lot of good things about like a J.C. Latham, a tackle from Alabama, Talise Fugala, a tackle from Oregon State. There are a lot of tackles. Amarius Mims, a tackle from Georgia, Paul. I hear he hasn't started that many games for Georgia, but when he plays, he's looked really good. He's 6'8", 345, a mauler at tackle.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
but here's my thinking. If Powers Johnson isn't available at 20, or if he is, maybe if you get that tackle first, and then at that end of the first round, if Powers Johnson's still available, or maybe you pick the center first, or even if say you're at number 20 and there's like two or three tackles and a good center, unless there's one guy you're in love with, why don't you trade back a couple spots and maybe you get more draft capital and you can get one of those guys. I I mean, I see some value. I mean, it's dangerous, but I see some value in it if there's a lot of guys left that you like.
Yeah, see, I feel like I'm becoming more sold on, and maybe it's because for the past couple years I feel like defensive linemen are just running straight up the middle at our quarterbacks. So I'm more passionate for a center now. So if even if the second best center is, Powers Johnson, let's say he goes 18, we're at 20, the second best center is still sitting there. Unless you're down to like the fourth best center and the best tackle still on the board, at that point maybe I'd go with the tackle. But if you can yeah, get the best possible center if you can.
Well, the only issue with the center is like Powers Johnson. Now, I saw a report by saying some teams are afraid to even pick him in the top 25. Um, there's a consensus of where mock drafts are going. Powers Johnson isn't in the top 25 in that. There's a guy from Duke. He's interior lineman. He can play center or guard. Graham Barton is up there too. I haven't heard too much else about him. The guy from West Virginia, Frazier, could be there at 51. It's always that danger of where do you pick the guy? And, you could look at mock drafts all day long. There's going to be guys drafted higher than you think and lower than you think, too. So I'm hoping that teams really, go high on receive. Well, I mean, we need a receiver, but the more quarterbacks that go early or the more edge rushers that go early, I want, some of the guys we need to fall down, Um,
I mean, yeah, I think with you got somebody from Duke, and I look at who does Duke really play? I mean, this was the same issue I had with Malik Willis. I mean, he's putting up crazy number, but he plays for Liberty. I mean, they're playing like Joe's air conditioning college. Oregon is playing a higher quality opponents than Duke is, and so
yeah, I mean,
I'd be really cautious about a lineman from Duke. I mean, unless you can see, in the combine, whatever, that he's got the stuff. I'm like,
Duke plays a better schedule than Liberty, but the schedule they play isn't, like you said, the upper
yeah,
teams.
it's not Oregon level.
Well, I would say one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, Derek May. He played for North Carolina. And there's some questions about some of the opposition he's played. So, I mean, it is definitely a valid point. So, yeah, but the more
I mean,
quarterbacks go,
another North Carolina quarterback that was drafted really high and didn't
I
quite live up to potential.
like May's got a good arm, and I like his size. He's a big guy. That's what I liked about even Ben Roethlisberger coming out. He looked like John Elway. Elway was a big guy. May's got that look. Now, again, that look. That doesn't mean he's going to have the career that Roethlisberger has. I love his size. Like Caleb Williams, he kind of looks like a little Pat Mahomes. He's kind of a smaller guy. So is Jaden Daniels. Um, that's concerning. People have even about Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. I mean, Wilson's lasted a long time being kind of a small guy that ran around a lot. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, but I'm saying there's a lot of interesting cornerbacks out there. Couple guys that should go in the teens. Cooper DeJean, I'm looking at a mock draft that has him going 20. He's a corner from Iowa. Pretty fast guy. Some people would say he reminds of a Rod Woodson. The thing about Cooper DeJean, though, is some people think he might be better safety than a corner. So I'm not sure.
I wouldn't mind me a tall glass of Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see that. Um.
Where's Kool-Aid on the mock drafts? Where's he go? Where does he
Oh.
go?
Oh yeah. Well, this is a consensus that takes like an average of where everyone is. What's his last name? Cooley's last name.
McKinstry or something like that?
Yeah, I've heard his name before. It's not on the consensus. And again, what the consensus was is they just took every draft and said, okay, here's the average pick that they're going at. You know what I mean? I don't see him on the top 25 here. Huh. It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. But again, there's all kinds of like crap out there where there's a lot of rumors, and I agree. You know, Joe's mentioned this is kind of a rule for the show. We can't just talk about rumors all the time, but I think we're getting close enough where we're starting to see what could potentially happen. You know, I mean, I think
Yeah.
talking about this stuff in January is silly, but you know, we're 3 weeks away, man. We're not too far away. It's getting pretty close here. Um, the Steelers, they have, I think it's like 12 million under the cap. They're saying a lot of times you need 10 million to sign draft picks. So technically it's probably more like 2 million under the cap. Have you heard anything about, you know, TJ Watt? He's got the potential of having his contract restructured. I've not heard anything about them approaching him or if he'd be willing to do that. Cam Hayward, he famously said, I'm not going to play for less. I don't know if they've had any conversations about that too. I mean, there's more money the Steelers could kind of free up. I haven't heard that yet. And see, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if you went straight in the draft and said, we have 4 holes, technically, if you used all 4 picks in the current spots, you can pick guys to fill in these holes we talked about. But there's other options out there. What do you think about the guy from Denver? He's a safety. I know the Steelers signed a safety, but they probably could use another one since a lot of teams use 3 safeties at a time. Justin Simmons, really good safety from Denver. He hasn't been signed yet. I wonder if his
Wouldn't
contract
hurt.
is going down. Yeah. In theory, he would cost a lot of money, but he hasn't been signed. A lot of safeties went off the board. That's one guy out there that's got me intrigued. Receiver. I mean, you know, we could go for a receiver in the draft. I'm seeing something here. There's an article talking about Steelers options that they could trade for in terms of receiver. Um, Apparently, both them and Tyler Boyd are interested in each other. It looks like the Steelers don't want to give Boyd the money he wants, so that's kind of a stalemate that may not work out. I'm actually okay with that. I'm not crazy about Tyler Boyd. He's better than what they have now, but I don't want them to have to overpay him. Um, Here's a couple other guys who are mentioned in this article. What do you think about Chris Godwin of the Buccaneers?
I sure wouldn't mind that.
Only issue is he's got $20 million in salary.
Ugh.
Again, you would have to, you know, restructure, you know, Cam and potentially TJ. I mean, it's
Yeah.
possible. What about this? Patriots. You know, Juju Smith Schuster. He supposedly could be available. 6.3 million in salary if you trade for him. There's some rumors saying the Patriots could even let him go. If you let him go, you can sign for whatever.
The, I might get hate for this, but I wouldn't be opposed.
I'm curious, you know, 2 years ago when the 1 year was with the Chiefs, he actually was one of the top receivers. He didn't do bad. Now, the Patriots were kind of messy last year. He got hurt, so he didn't do much for the Patriots. I guess what I'm saying is I want another productive guy. And yeah, I think you and Joe have talked me off a ledge. You don't have to get this big super stud guy, but I mean, could Juju become your number 2 guy? And I'm talking 50, 60 catches. I'm not saying he has to catch 200 balls. I guess that's my question about him. Now, if you could get him for a 7th-round pick, yeah, why not? But I don't want to invest a ton in him, you know?
I Man, I
Two other
don't
guys.
know that I would go in with the thought of Juju being number two. I think I would lean for him more to be number three to see, and maybe he impresses enough to slide up to number two. But I'd assume him at number three.
Well, and I think that's where it's going to really be interesting to see how they slot these guys. I'm with you. I would not be opposed to Alta offensive lineman in the first round. And you're right. Again, if there's 17 receivers, could you get a quality guy in the third round? Yeah, potentially. I'm not sure if that guy would be your number two guy. So if you don't sign anybody else or trade for anybody else, are we okay with Van Jefferson being a number two and maybe the rookie being number three? And what are we saying about Calvin Austin? I don't think Calvin Austin's a number two right now, but are they going to use him more? They didn't last year.
No.
Now you have a new coach. They got a small, fast guy from the Eagles, which kind of made me scratch my head about what they're doing with Calvin Austin. And see, that's what I'm saying. I'm with you. Let's don't get desperate. Let's don't make a crazy trade. But then, you know, say what you want about Russell Wilson. I think he could be an improvement over last year, but you got to give him somebody to throw the ball to. You know what I mean? He might stink if you give him
Right,
nobody, you know? And what if Pickens flakes out? I mean, if Pickens flakes out and you have Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins, the guy they got from the Eagles, I'm a little scared, to be honest with you. Another guy this article speculated on. Again, this is all speculation. Treylon Burks, if you remember, he was one of those like rookie receivers that was supposed to be pretty good. He's done nothing with the Titans. He's been rough. So you'd be taking a chance on this guy. You know, he could be good, he could be bad. Who knows? And two other rumors out there. Again, we talked about this weeks ago. It's going to be a lot. Brandon Ayuk is apparently still out there, and potentially Terry McLaurin from the Washington old Buckeye guy. So, I mean, to
yeah,
me, I guess what do you have to give up for him? I mean, if you're giving up, like I heard with Ayuk, it could be a first and a third this year. Hey, he's really good, but then everything that we talked about offensive line goes out the window if we do that trade.
right. Yeah, I don't like the cost of bringing him in. Some of these other guys, I think, are kind of in that pool of, it's we could probably get a decent deal done for kind of that two or three role receiver.
Well, and the other thing about Ayuk, and Ayuk is got more talent than Justin Fields. But think about Justin Fields. At the beginning of the offseason, people are like, man, if you want to trade for him, you're going to have to give him a first round pick. Now it's a 6th round pick. Now, I don't think you can get Ayuk for a 6th round pick, but maybe what if the 49ers say, man, we got to get rid of him. We'll take him for a 2nd or 4th or something. I mean, that sounds a lot more appetizing than any combination of 1st round picks, too. And maybe that's why this is dragging on for, like it is, you know?
Man, yeah, that's. I mean, I was just looking at a mock draft from Sporting News that had us taking the receiver out of Florida State in the 2nd round. I just the thought of essentially using a 2nd round pick to get a wide receiver, I'd really have to hear the case for that because I really want to shore up that offensive line.
Well, I gotta admit, I don't know these receiver candidates super well, and there's a lot out there. If you could pick a guy first, second, or even 3rd rounds, make a case that they can produce now. You know what I mean? They don't have to be your number
Right,
one guy the second, but I don't want to pick a guy in the 2nd round and you never hear from. You know what I mean? I mean, I want
right,
to see a guy on the field making some type of plays. He doesn't have to be, Jerry Rice, but I don't think like Lima Swede, the guy that got all this talented and nothing other than drop passes. I mean, the guy you guys to produce. And again, wasn't against him training Deontay Johnson, but I mean, give me something, to go with. The other thing, and this happened like 2 weeks ago, and I'm a little confused by this. This is after the Steelers got Russell Wilson and got Justin Fields. Michael Penix, he was a guy, he used to play for Indiana. He transferred out to Washington. He caught fire at Washington. They made the national title game before losing to Michigan. Penix has gotten hurt, but Penix is a quick guy. He can throw it deep. I was a little confused. The Steelers brought him in for one of their top 30 visits. Penix is a guy, he could go first round. He could go as late as the third or fourth round. The Steelers, maybe they were like, hey, there's 20 guys we're seriously looking at. Why not bring in this guy and see what he has to say? I'm just a little confused why they're bringing another quarterback. I mean, I guess if Penix was around the third or fourth round, why not? But I don't know. Do you think that visit meant anything, or?
I no, it could also just be part of the game playing. Like if people think maybe we're looking to draft a quarterback in the second or third round, that we could have some draft capital to work with. But I mean, if we're able to get, let's say we get the chance to draft Penix in the third round, I wouldn't be against that. I mean, I'm not a Kyle Allen fan. Like, no, he's number three. Don't. I mean, if Kyle Allen falls by the wayside, I don't think that's the worst thing that could happen. I mean, Penix would certainly be a nice addition in the third round.
Well, here's the issue. I hope this is a mistake that Mel Kiper made. He had recent mock drafts where he didn't project a quarterback in the first round, but he said quarterback could be on the table for the Steelers in the first round. Now, I know I know the argument that people are going to say, because you're looking at it and you're saying, look, Russell Wilson has a year contract. Now, Wilson's already talked about, and this probably has lowered his market value for Steelers. He's already like, hey, I'm looking to resign with the Steelers. I'll tell you I did that. Now, what does he want next year? I mean, it's probably going to be more than $1 million. So, and again, we don't know if Russell Wilson's going to be great, bad, indifferent. Who knows? But the other argument is the same thing goes to Justin Fields. I'm with you. There's questions about Justin Fields. There's no guarantee he's going to be any good. But even if both guys are outstanding, they're both free agents at the end of the year. I mean, you might just have Kyle Allen on your roster after this year. But the issue I have with Penix is, remember what we said about Pickett when they drafted him. When you draft a quarterback in the first round, if it's at 20 or 1 or whatever, you got to start that quarterback. So if you drafted Penix or whatever quarterback you look at there, you've got to fast track him to number 1, which makes no sense since you got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields ahead of him. I hope it's some gamesmanship. I heard a rumor saying that, Tomlin was kind of palling around with Justin Fields when he first got drafted, and Tomlin knew that Fields would never last that long. And they're saying, hey, maybe this could be something that Tomlin revisits 2-3 years from now. Who knows, But I don't know. I just thought it was kind of weird. And like you said,
if we draft a quarterback in the first year or in the first round, I might have to abstain from my rooting this season and just be very passive in my support of this team.
Well, it just doesn't make sense, because you almost have to start a guy in the first year if you draft him in the first round. Now, if some outstanding guy falls, I don't know, but quarterbacks are going to go early. I could maybe make the argument if they didn't trade for Justin Fields and if they were still just had Russell Wilson, you could sit there and say, okay, Russell Wilson's older, he's not going to be around for long. Let's get a guy, and maybe Wilson could be kind of like that. What do you call it? Mitch Trubisky. I could see maybe the argument, but you got two decent quarterbacks. Why are you doing this? It doesn't make sense. And again, you don't have any receivers. You need linemen. There's so many other needs. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
I think we have in terms of quarterback. I think again, if Penix is there in the third round, I'd be okay with that. But revisit that next year. Next
Well,
year, if you want to draft a quarterback higher, fine. But let's get whoever we're going to bring in, let's set them up with an amazing offensive line so that whoever it is, they're not going to get obliterated in the first 3 minutes of their career.
and the other argument you can make is I'm not sold on Kyle Allen, but if you're really looking to draft a quarterback semi early, and I'm even talking third or fourth round, why did you sign Kyle Allen? I mean, Kyle Allen's not outstanding, but yeah, I've heard the argument the Steelers like to carry four quarterbacks, and I've heard the argument saying, well, let's make sure they get one quarterback that could be a starter. We don't know, what Wilson or Fields is going to be like, but then what's the point of signing Kyle Allen? Just don't sign Kyle Allen and get a quarterback in the draft. I just don't. The logic doesn't make sense when you have the other holes that you have.
And
I
I,
mean, if
I
this,
know I'm always, maybe I just have a wrong perspective, but the Steelers seem to have the mentality of win now, which I'm not opposed to that, but I'm also thinking about, but what comes next? What are we doing next year, the year after that? And I feel like we're just worried about this year and the quarterback situation. We're like, we'll figure it out later. It's like, okay, but let's not put ourselves in a spot where we're forking over bags of cash to bring Wilson back. And
well, I mean, in essence, that's what you're doing. I mean, you're playing for this year, and again, I don't think they're a serious Super Bowl contender right now. I mean, look at the end of the year. I mean, uh, you got Pickens under rookie contract. You got a lot of receivers under 1 year contracts. I mean, we could be going for this next year. And maybe the thought would be is if they're not happy with Wilson or Fields, or if Wilson or Fields wants too much money, and maybe that's why you're not seeing a TJ Watt contract restructure yet or a Cam contract restructure. Are they saying that if all these guys flame out and they need to get a big quarterback, maybe they'll have the money to do it? Maybe you can bring a 20 or $30 million contract in. Dak Prescott is going to his last year. It doesn't look like the Cowboys will resign him. I'm seeing some national guys say, "Hey, Dak could end up being the quarterback next year. Who knows?" And I'm not against the idea, but I'm not super crazy about the idea either.
yeah, Dak is just, he's one of those great regular season quarterbacks who then just disappears in the postseason. But I feel like, because they have to be thinking about TJ Watt, and at some point, if there's no hint that we're even thinking about a Super Bowl, at some point he's going to walk away. And I mean, obviously, you don't want to sacrifice the entire team for the sake of one guy, but he's a guy you don't want to let walk away. I mean, he's kind of that rare, high caliber guy that you want to keep him at all costs. I mean, you kept bringing back Derek Watt for crying out loud.
Well, USA Today, they have sports blogs. It's kind of like separate from their regular edition, where they'll hire people to write these articles. And again, if you're on the Steelers USA Today sports blog beat, you've got to go after every rumor out there because what else are you going to write about? But there's this guy who did a mock draft where he said, "Hey, he mentioned some of the things you were talking about and saying, yeah, TJ Watt's great, but maybe you figure, hey, we can't get a Super Bowl team with him, so why not try to restructure?" They had some trade going around that would have him go to Atlanta for their first and second round draft pick, and they got mocked all over the place for even suggesting that. Uh, and again, I'm not for trading TJ Watt, but you got to think too. can you build that team around them? But I think to what you said before, I think the Steelers are definitely in a mode where they don't look ahead. They just sit there and say, I mean, they got lucky when Wilson came for $1 million, and they got lucky when Justin Fields came for a real low draft pick. And they're like, hey, let's throw these darts against the board and see what happens. And if all's good, you got two good quarterbacks you can figure out for the following year. But I think they're saying that if it stinks, yeah, I mean, they're not going to be a Super Bowl team, but they're not saddled with a humongous contract either that it's going to cost them to get rid of. But
I mean, I think Wilson is going to be solid. I mean, if he stays healthy, I know he's had issues, but he's been pretty consistent. And the fact that we went to the playoffs last year and put up a fight in the wild card, for as horrific as last year was, they have to be thinking they've got to at least be aiming for sniffing at the AFC Championship game. And I don't think, because again, we walked in the playoffs with hot dog vendors as linebackers. I mean, I don't think
yeah.
it's unrealistic. I'm just
Oh,
worried about.
well, I think if the defense stays healthy, Russell Wilson, like I said, for me, a 20 touchdown season would be okay. Not we're gonna breeze away with the Super Bowl. And like you said, it was a crap team last year. They got to the first round of the playoffs. I think if they can play solid, I could see them being a second round team this year. Now, maybe not AFC title team. I'll tell you, Paul, AFC is getting really scary. I mean, I think the Chiefs can be beat, but the Chiefs are built to go a long way. I think the Bills are still. I know they lost Stephon Diggs. They got some receiver questions answered in the draft too. I mean, they're going to be the same boat the Steelers are, but I think Josh Allen's still really good. I don't think the Bills are going away. I'll tell you, the team, and I meant to ask John Harris about this when we had him on last week. The Houston Texans, man, did you see all the stuff they did?
Yes, they're
I
they're
mean, they
going to be
traded
tough.
for and think about everything they did last year. I don't think they lost anybody super major off that team. You've got young CJ Stroud, you got young Will Anderson, their edge guy, and Will Anderson's nowhere near as good as TJ Watt or anything, but you've got a great rusher on a rookie contract, quarterback on a rookie contract, and the Texans were smart. They swung big. They got Stephon Diggs. I know Diggs is getting older. They don't have to give up hardly anything for him. They got more stability at running back. I'm not super sold on Joe Mixon, but Joe Mixon is better than what they had last year. And they got Hunter, the guy from Minnesota. He's a great defensive lineman. Man, I don't know if Houston's a Super Bowl team next year, but they're going to contend. So you think
Oh
you
yeah,
got Houston, Kansas City, Buffalo. Um, I think if Joe Burrow is healthy, I think Cincinnati's going to be better. I Baltimore, they flail in the playoffs, but I think they'll win games. They'll be up there, at least in the regular season. There's still a lot of good AFC teams out there.
and I'm
And
seeing on mock drafts the Jets taking Marvin Harrison Jr.
yeah,
The thought of, I mean, that Jets defense is good, and then if you've got Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison, that could be problematic.
yeah, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Steelers are going to be 2-15. I think they're going to be good enough to be in the mix. But I mean, don't you know? Geez, I wish the Steelers were in the NFC. I think they could make a lot more hay in the NFC next year. AFC is still going to be tough. I think they're better than the Browns, but I think the Browns will still go win some games next year. I don't see them getting far in the playoffs, but I think they'll win some stuff. The funny thing about the TJ Watt trade proposal was it was assuming that Nick Herbig could just slide in there and become the TJ Watt clone. I mean, he would have to start if they would trade TJ Watt, and I like Nick Herbig a lot, but I don't not sure if I want to say he's your number one, number two edge rusher right now.
No, not
Um,
yet.
One other thing that's interesting, I don't think the Steelers should necessarily go after outside guy. They really haven't done much to bring back Marcus Golden. I think it was okay last year, but he's out there as a free agent. So, if they don't bring him back, Nick Herbig's your third outside linebacker. And maybe they don't mind that. I mean, Nick Herbig didn't play that much. I think he was promising enough when he did play. You think Nick Herbig just, I mean, if they don't bring Marcus Golden back, you think they're happy with Herbig at 3?
I I wouldn't be surprised if they're content with that.
Yeah. And I guess what you could do is, maybe you could look later in the draft for outside linebacker. I mean, you wouldn't have to bring in a guy early that would have to play a lot. I don't know. Should be interesting. Well, the Steelers are always interesting, man. We keep saying that there's nothing to talk about, but we almost did an hour on them. So, and I thought there was some good stuff there. So, anything else? I'm doing a final Twitter check just to make sure nothing out of the ordinary happened the last hour or so.
I think once we hit the draft, that'll things will become a little more clear.
There was a wild rumor out there. There's this guy that claimed he knew the inside. He was saying that like they were actively negotiating with Mason and Kenny, and um the rumor was, and again, everyone's got their sources. The rumor was that Wilson was starting to say, "Hey, I need to be the starter if I'm going to come," and apparently impressed him enough where that's where all the changes happened. I don't know. It was just a rumor I heard. I'll put it that way. Oh, I'm seeing this, Paul. You, as a Kenny Pickett fan, did you see Pickett? I guess originally he was going to wear 16. Now he's wearing number 7. How about that?
Oh, okay.
Would you ever buy a uniform of a player? I was thinking about this last week.
I have a TJ Watt jersey.
Okay. And I would imagine Watt's going to be here for a while. I always wonder if, like, things go south with a guy or whatever. I mean, you used to like, Kenny Pickett, but, think back to all the Browns quarterbacks they had that went away. It's just like.
Say, if I can find somewhere around here a Pickett jersey on clearance, I will grab it.
Yeah. Yeah, but you want the Eagles Pickett jersey, right?
Doesn't matter.
It won't be on clearance.
I am not going to wear an Eagles jersey around here, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, that'll be rough. Yeah, Eagles don't play the Steelers this year, do they?
I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna look that up real quick.
But it's going to be Kenny Pickett and the Eagles versus Mitch Trubisky and the Bills in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm down with that. I'm pretty good. Oh yeah, Steelers at the Eagles this year. Day 2 be determined. Okay. Steelers also in the NFC will play the Commanders. Yeah, I don't remember them playing Washington super recently. They're at Atlanta.
When do they play the Eagles?
Well, the dates haven't been determined yet. It just says that it'll depend on when the game gets scheduled. They're home against Dallas, so I think they mostly play NFC East teams. But again, since the what is it? The you play the extra game. The Falcons are the extra game. It's out of the NFC conference they normally play. So, yeah, they got Kansas City at home this year. Wow. That's going to be interesting. The Chargers at home. Giants at home. Jets at home. Man, this schedule's looking a little difficult, Paul. They're at Atlanta, so Arthur Smith gets to go back to his old place and kind of return. Oh boy! And then I always get crap from friends about the Dallas game, but who knows how that'll go? It'll be interesting. So, All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about. We have a Etc. program coming up. We're going to give a rundown of the eclipse. Wanted to talk a little about Caitlin Clark. The WNBA draft is coming up, and that might be the most interesting WNBA draft of all time. And what else was I? Oh, I want to talk some late night TV. I got all excited because my all-time favorite late night host, Conan O'Brien, was back on the Tonight Show. I I have not watched the Tonight Show in many years, and I watched it for the first time. I was kind of intrigued, so we'll have to talk about that. All right, so for Paul, this is Chris. Thanks for checking out the Steelers. Have a great night, everybody.